All right, guys, here is the last money script. This is money vigilance. Now, out of the 4 money scripts, this is probably the most positive one. Those other 3 are typically negative. This 4th one is typically positive, but also has its downsides that we'll talk as we jump into examples. But money vigilance is all about somebody that's hyper aware of their finances. Okay, so they tend to be very watchful, very alert, and concerned about their money all the time. They worry about it a lot. They think about it constantly. They're less likely to avoid financial matters like troubles, and they're less likely to overspend, right? They keep it. To save is better than to spend, okay? They're frugal to the core, or cheap depending, okay? But they feel it's necessary to save their money, so they stockpile their money, okay? And they can suffer from workaholism and can be distrustful around others around money. They don't like to talk about money with other people because they don't trust it. They don't want others to perceive them a certain way. If they have a lot or if they don't have a lot, it's not polite to talk about money. And so generally speaking, this leads to not overspending, and it leads to saving over spending, okay? Which is generally, financially speaking, a pretty good trait to have. So overall, good, but it can lead in excess, it can lead to other problems, okay? So some common examples are money should be saved, not spent, like we talked about. People should work for their money and not be given handouts, okay? That's a very core principle. It's not polite to talk about money. It's not polite to ask other people how much they make, or to talk about how much money you have or how much money you make. It's not polite conversation. It should be avoided. And it's extravagant to spend money on yourself. Okay. So they frequently will not buy things for themselves, clothes even. Money vigilance I have a lot of that. And part of it was how I was raised and how my parents were raised. A lot of us, our grandparents, right? My grandparents lived through the Great Depression, right? As did a lot of ours. And that is, it was an extremely transformative experience, and it really kind of set them on a course for the rest of their lives. So some of the things my grandma did to save money were extreme, even when she didn't need to. Later in life, when things were good and she could do what she wanted, but she would still do these little things that were habits she picked up because of her time during the Depression, where, hey, things can vanish overnight. Some of those were transferred or taught to my parents as they grew up, right? So they lived very frugally, right? Stay out of debt, no debt, buy things in cash. Saving is better than spending, and on and on and on. And so I kind of picked up on that. So I've always been more of a saver instead of a spender. I usually don't buy myself clothes or things that I need. Usually it's my wife will finally say like, okay, here, I bought you some clothes, because I can't do it for myself. Typically, I just don't see the point. So this one is something that I'm working through as well. Now, one example of this, I had a conversation once with a guy my age. He was earning really, really, really good money. Okay. He was in sales, earning fantastic money, and he was stuck. We had a conversation, said, hey, I'm trying to figure out what I need to do. They had well over $100,000 in savings, and they had very little in investment. And as we talked through it, he said, yeah, if I invest it, like I could lose it. And so I'm just trying to, I feel like I need a little bit more in my bank account to feel secure until I, can actually take money and invest it, or like upgrade our home like we need to, and things like that. And so he was very clearly in our conversation displaying, the traits of somebody with money vigilance. Didn't like to spend. It was easy for somebody that's money vigilant to judge others for how they spend money. We're like, well, that's ridiculous. Like, no way they can afford that, or they must be broke, or look at how much debt they're in. I would never buy that. I would never spend money on that. On and on and on. It's really easy to be judgmental and kind of project that outward, especially among spouses. So we had some of these conversations, and I asked him, I said, okay, that's fair. You want to have money, you want to be secure, have money in your savings account. How much money do you need to have in there before you can do some of these other things? Like before you'd let yourself do it? And he couldn't answer that. He was flustered. And the reason is there's never enough. The goalpost will always move here to feeling financially secure. And so even though their situation was extremely good financially, he felt high anxiety, high stress, couldn't buy even simple things that would add value to his family. He couldn't spend money on those things because he needed it in the bank, like he needed it for security. And he was so worried about spending it. And then anytime he did spend, he would feel so guilty that he should have saved it instead. So there's a lot of guilt and shame when we finally do spend money and we're like, oh, I should have saved that money. I should have saved it instead of spent it. That would have been the right thing to do, or the better thing to do. So those feelings are super common. And the bottom line is there's never enough to feel secure. And so again, while they were very secure financially, he had constant stress that it was just going to all disappear. Okay. Now, fear of survival is a very powerful emotion. motivation, very powerful motivator to continue to do things well and to do things the right way with money. But at a certain point, you have to understand, hey, this is actually hindering my quality of life and it's actually hampering my progress. And I'll never get ahead if I continue to think this way. So while it's very positive, there are some drawbacks there. And I've worked with many clients have money vigilance because they're hyper aware, they're hyper focused, and they feel like they're missing out, but they also have a lot of anxiety and worry about their money. And so it's really hard. And we have, you got to do a lot of work to work through that. And if you're married, a lot of work with your spouse to like sort through those feelings. What's really tricky is when you have somebody that's money vigilant is like their dominant money script, and somebody else that's like money status or money worship, where they just want to spend money. This other person just wants to save money, and things get really difficult and contentious. And that's a very tricky place to be. So now that we've gone through the money scripts, in the next exercise, I'm going to actually walk you through some exercises where you can start to understand your emotions around money and understand your spouse's emotions around money and how you guys think, what your beliefs are, where you are now, and then look forward to say, okay, now we're coming together. We understand each other's background and how each other thinks in a very non-judgmental way. And now we're charting a path together in the future, getting clarity so that we can like forge ahead and actually make progress instead of like always kind of being at odds with these different subconscious beliefs. So this wraps up our conversation about money scripts. They'll pop up, but I hope this is helpful, and we'll dive into the next video, which will contain some exercises and some thought exercises for you guys to go through on your own. So we'll see you in the next video.
Money should support life, not control it.